Imagine this. You're lying in bed. The world outside is dead silent. And then you hear it a faint tick, tick, tick from the old clock downstairs. You glance at your phone. It's 3 a.m. Suddenly, the ticking stops. Not just slows down, but stops. Like someone hit pause on time itself. You wait, holding your breath. But the silence grows heavier, thicker, until it feels like the house is holding its breath to... That's exactly what happened in the old Hawthorne Manor. A crumbling mansion on the edge of a forgotten town where every clock froze at 3 a.m. and no one knows why, or at least no one's lived to tell the whole story. My name's Alex, and I'm the kind of person who can't leave a mystery alone. I'm 17. Just moved to this sleepy nowhere town called Grey Hollow with my mum after she got a job at the local library. Grey Hollows, the kind of place where nothing happens, where the most exciting news is a cow escaping a farm. But there's one thing everyone whispers about: Hawthorne Manor. It sits on a hill, old jagged spires and broken windows, like something ripped out of a nightmare. Kids dare each other to sneak inside, but no one stays long. They say it's haunted, that the air inside feels wrong, like it's watching you. I didn't believe the stories at first. I mean, ghosts, come on. But I'm a sucker for a good puzzle, and when I heard about the clocks, I couldn't resist. It was a Saturday when I decided to check it out. The sky was bruised with clouds, and a cold wind tugged at my jacket as I biked up the hill. The manor loomed ahead, its iron gates, rusted and half open, creaking like they were daring me to step inside. Up close, the place was even worse: peeling paint, ivy choking the walls, and windows that looked like empty eyes. The front door was slightly ajar, and I could have sworn I heard a faint hum, like a heartbeat, coming from inside. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me first. Damp wood, mildew, and something sharp, like old metal. The foyer was massive, with a chandelier dangling above, its crystals dull and coated in dust. And there, on the far wall, was the clock. It was huge, its face yellowed, hands stuck at 3 o'clock. I checked my phone to 47 p.m. Not a ghost thing, just a coincidence. Right, I stepped further in, my sneakers squeaking on the warped floorboards. The air felt heavy, like I was wading through water. There were other clocks everywhere, small ones on tables. A grandfather clock in the corner, even a pocket watch dangling from a hook, all stopped at 3 a.m. I ran my fingers over the big clock's frame, and the wood was ice cold, colder than it should have been. That's when I noticed the scratches. Tiny, frantic marks carved into the wood, like someone had clawed at it. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was just vandalism, but the marks looked too desperate, too deep. Then I heard it a creak from upstairs, sharp and deliberate, like a footstep. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing in the empty house. No answer, just another creak. Slower this time, like someone was trying not to be heard. I should have left. Every horror movie screams at you to run when you hear noises in a creepy house. But I'm stubborn. If there was someone or something up there, I wanted to know what. I grabbed a rusty candlestick from a table, just in case, and started up the staircase. The steps groaned under my weight, and the air got colder with every step. At the top, a long hallway stretched out, lined with doors, all closed except one at the far end. A faint light flickered from inside, not steady like a bulb, but wavering like a candle. I crept forward, the candlestick heavy in my hand. The floorboards were littered with dust, but there were footprints, fresh ones, too small to be mine, leading straight to the open door. My mouth went dry. I told myself it was just a kid, someone else dumb enough to explore, but the silence was wrong. It wasn't just quiet, it was suffocating, like the house was swallowing sound itself. When I reached the door, I peeked inside. The room was small, with a single window boarded up, and in the center was a table. On it sat an old journal, its pages yellowed, and a candle burning low, wax dripping onto the wood. The flame flickered, but there was no breeze. No one was there. But those footprints, they stopped right at the table. I stepped inside, my pulse hammering. The journal was open, and the handwriting was jagged, like it was written in a hurry. I only caught a few words. 3 a.m., it comes. Don't look before the candle flame surged, flaring bright enough to blind me for a second. I stumbled back, and that's when the door slammed shut behind me. Not a slow creak, but a hard, violent slam that rattled the walls. I spun around, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My breath caught in my throat, and the air felt tighter, like it was pressing against my chest. Then, from the other side of the door, I heard Italo, rasping whisper, too soft to make out. But close, so close, it felt like it was right in my ear. I backed away, clutching the candlestick, my eyes darting around the room. The journal was still there, the candle still burning, but the footprints were gone, just gone, like they'd never been there. The whisper stopped, replaced by a faint ticking, slow and uneven, like a clock trying to start again. It was coming from the walls, from the floor, from everywhere. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I pulled it out, the screen glittered, numbers flickering, before settling on 3 a.m. But it was the afternoon. It had to be. I checked the window, prying at the boards, but they were nailed tight. The ticking grew louder, faster, and the air felt alive, buzzing against my skin. What was happening in this house? If every clock stopped at 3 a.m., what was still moving, still watching in the dark? My heart was still pounding as I stood in that cramped room. The journal's jagged words burned into my mind. 3 a.m., it comes. Don't look. The ticking had stopped, but the silence was worse thick, like it was daring me to move. I gripped the candlestick tighter, my knuckles white, and tried the door again. It was stuck, like something was holding it shut from the other side. I pressed my ear against the wood, half expecting that rasping whisper to start again. But there was nothing, just my own shaky breathing. I wasn't imagining this. The glitching phone, the vanishing footprints, the candle that flared for no reason. Something was wrong with Hawthorne Manor, and I was trapped in it. I turned back to the journal, the only thing in the room that might explain what was happening. The candle's flame was steady now, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I flipped through the pages, careful not to tear the brittle paper. The handwriting was messy, sometimes illegible, but I pieced together fragments. It watches at 3 a.m., one page read. The clocks don't lie. Another page had a sketcher, crude drawing of a figure, too tall, too thin, with no face, just a smudge where a head should be. My skin crawled. The last entry was the worst. I tried to leave. It won't let me. The words were scrawled so hard, the pen had torn through the paper. Whoever wrote this was terrified, and they'd been right here, in this room. I shoved the journal into my backpack. Maybe it was a prank, some old diary left to scare trespassers. But those footprints I'd seen weren't fake. They'd been fresh, small, like a kid's, and they'd led straight to this table before disappearing. I scanned the room for anything else, a trapdoor, a hidden panel, something to explain how someone could have vanished. The walls were cracked plaster, the floor just warped wood, but when I knelt to check under the table, I found something carved into the underside. 1893. initials and a date scratched deep like the claw marks on the clock downstairs. My mind raced. Was he H, the journal's author? And why 1893? This house was old, sure, but that was over a century ago. A faint thud echoed from somewhere below, like something heavy falling. I froze, straining to listen. Another thud, then a scrape, slow and deliberate, like furniture being dragged across the floor. My first thought was someone else was in the house, another idiot like me, poking around, but the journal's words gnawed at me. It comes. I didn't want to think about what it might be. I banged on the door, shouting, "Hey! Is someone there?" My voice bounced off the walls, unanswered. The scraping stopped, but now I heard something else. Footsteps, soft and uneven, climbing the stairs. They were too slow, too careful, not like someone rushing to help. I backed away from the door, my pulse hammering. The footsteps stopped right outside, and for a moment I thought I saw the handle twitch. Then, with a groan, the door swung open. Not fast, not like someone pushed it, but slow, like it was moving on its own. The hallway beyond was empty, just shadows and dust, but the air felt different, sharper, colder, like stepping into a freezer. I didn't want to go out there, but staying in this room, with its creepy journal and impossible footprints, wasn't any better. I edged into the hallway, candlestick raised, and noticed something new. A faint smudge on the floor, like a handprint, right where the footsteps had stopped. It was too big to be human, the fingers too long, and it glistened like it was wet. I told myself it was just water, a leak from the roof, but my gut screamed to run. I forced myself to move, creeping down the hallway, past closed doors that seemed to hum with something I couldn't place. The smudge wasn't the only clue. Further down, I found a scrap of fabric caught on a splintered doorframe blue. It looked ancient, but the edges were frayed, like it had been torn off recently. I tucked it into my pocket, my mind spinning. The journal, the initials, the fabric pieces of a puzzle, but none of them fit yet. I needed more, and the only way to get it was to keep going, even if every step felt like walking into a trap. The staircase creaked as I headed downstairs, back to the foyer with its frozen clocks. The big clock on the wall was still stuck at 3 a.m., but now I noticed something I'd missed before. A thin crack in the wall beside it, barely visible, like a seam. I ran my fingers along it, and the wall felt hollow, like there was space behind it. My heart, a hidden room. I pushed hard, and with a low grind, a section of the wall slid inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A cold draft wafted up, carrying a faint smell of earth and something sour like decay. I hesitated. Every horror movie trope screamed at me to turn back, but the journal's warning, "It won't let me," felt like a challenge. If there was an answer to what was happening, it was down there. I pulled out my phone, using its flashlight to light the way. The beam shook in my hand as I started down the stairs. The walls were rough stone, slick with damp, and the air grew heavier, pressing against my chest. At the bottom was a small room, more like a cellar, with shelves lined with jars, cloudy glass, filled with dark shapes I couldn't make out. In the center was a table, and on it a single object, a pocket watch, identical to the one upstairs, its hands frozen at 3 a.m. But this one was ticking, faint and erratic, like it was struggling to keep time. I reached for it, my hand trembling, and the ticking stopped. The silence was deafening. Then I heard its footsteps, not from the stairs, but from the shadows behind me. Slow, deliberate, and impossibly close. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the dark, but the room was empty. My breath hitched, The journal's words echoed in my head. Don't look, but I couldn't help it. I turned back to the table, and the watch was gone. In its place was a single word, scratched into the wood. Run. My blood ran cold. The footsteps started again, louder now, and the air buzzed with something alive, something watching. I bolted for the stairs, my flashlight flickering, and as I reached the top, I heard it a low, guttural laugh, echoing from the dark below. The hidden door slammed shut behind me, and I was back in the foyer, gasping, alone. Or so I thought, because when I turned, the big clock's hands had moved. Just a fraction, barely noticeable, but they weren't at 3 a.m. anymore. They were at 3:01. My chest heaved as I stared at the clock, its hands now pointing to 3:01. The air in the foyer felt alive, buzzing with a pressure that made my ears pop. The hidden door I'd just escaped through was sealed shut, no trace of the crack I'd found before. The candlestick was still in my hand, its weight a small comfort. But my phone's flashlight was dimming, the battery draining faster than it should. The journal in my backpack felt heavier, like it was anchoring me to this place. That laugh low, guttural, not human still echoed in my head, and the word run, carved into the table downstairs, burned behind my eyes. But run where? The front door was right there. But something told me Hawthorne Manor wasn't done with me. I backed away from the clock, my sneakers scuffing against the dusty floor. The house was too quiet now. No ticking, no footsteps, just a suffocating stillness that made every creak of the floorboards sound like a gunshot. I needed answers. The journal, the fabric, the initials EH, they were all connected. And that cellar, with its ticking watch and jars of shadowed things, was the heart of it. I pulled the journal from my backpack, my hands shaking as I opened it again. The pages felt colder now, almost damp, and the words seemed to shift under the fading light of my phone. One line stood out, written in a different hand, steadier than the rest. The shadow takes at 3 a.m. To stop it, find her. My mind raced. Was she the one trapped here? The one who wrote it won't let me? A sudden chill swept through the foyer, sharp enough to make my breath cloud. The chandelier above swayed, its crystals clinking softly, though there was no breeze. I spun around, half expecting to see that too tall, faceless figure from the journal sketch. But the room was empty. Then I saw it, a faint glow, pulsing from the base of the big clock. Not light, exactly, but something darker, like a ripple in the air. I stepped closer, heart pounding, and noticed the claw marks on the clock's frame again. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, a symbol, like a circle with jagged lines cutting through it. I'd seen it before, in the journal, scrawled next to the words, "Don't look." I reached out, my fingers hovering over the symbol, and the air hummed, low and resonant, like a tuning fork. The clock's face shimmered, and for a split second, I saw something behind the glass, not gears, but a reflection. A girl, pale, with dark hair, her eyes wide and unblinking, staring right at me. I stumbled back, my phone slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. The reflection was gone, but the humming grew louder, vibrating in my bones. The journo's words flashed in my mind. The shadow takes at 3 a.m. Was she the shadow, or was she the one it took? I grabbed my phone, the screen now cracked but still working, and ran my fingers along the clock's frame, searching for anything, a latch, a seam. There had to be more. Something hidden like the cellar door. My hand brushed a small groove, and with a click, a panel in the clock's base popped open. Inside was a bundle of letters, tied with a frayed ribbon, and a locket, its silver tarnished but engraved with the same symbol from the claw marks. I opened the locket first. Inside was a faded photograph of a girl, maybe my age, with dark hair and a sad smile. On the back, in tiny script, were the initials E and the year 1893. My stomach twisted. This was her. The letters were next. They were brittle, the ink smudged but readable. They were all addressed to Ellie, signed by someone named Thomas. The first few were love letters, sweet and nervous, but the later ones grew frantic. You can't stay in that house. One read, it's not safe. The shadow knows you're there. The last letter was unfinished, the words trailing off. Ellie, if you're reading this, it's too late. It's coming for the rest was a smear of ink, like the pen had been ripped away. I felt sick. Ellie Hawthorne, Ia had lived here, and someone had trapped her. The shadow, the humming stopped, replaced by a low creak from upstairs. Not footsteps this time, but something heavier, like wood splintering. I stuffed the letters and locket into my backpack with the journal, my hands shaking. The glow from the clock was gone, but the hands had moved against 3:02. Time was moving, or something was moving it. I didn't want to go upstairs, but the answers were there. Ellie's story, the shadow. The reason every clock stopped it was all tied to this house, and I was too deep to turn back now. The staircase seemed longer this time, each step groaning under my weight. The hallway at the top was darker, the air thick with that sour, decayed smell from the cellar. The door to the journal room was open, but the candle inside was out. The room pitch. I flicked on my phone's flashlight, its weak beam barely cutting through the gloom. The table was empty now. No journal, no candle, just more of those claw marks. Deeper, fresher, like they'd been carved minutes ago. My breath hitched. Something was here, and it was close. Then I saw her. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light, but the girl from the locket, standing at the far end of the hallway. She was translucent, her edges flickering like a bad signal, but her eyes were real, locked on mine. She raised a hand, pointing to a door I hadn't noticed before. Its wood warped and blackened, like it had been burned. My mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to run, but her expression wasn't angry, it was desperate. She mouthed something, silent but clear. Help me. The door she pointed to creaked open, just an inch, and a cold draft spilled out, carrying that same guttural laugh I'd heard in the cellar. The girl vanished, and the hallway seemed to stretch. The door growing farther away, even as I walked toward it. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled forward, my hand finding the door's handle. It was freezing, biting into my skin, but I pushed it open. Inside was a room I hadn't seen before, vast and wrong, its walls pulsing with that dark, rippling glow. In the center stood a figure, not the girl, but something else, too tall, too thin, its head a smudge of shadow. It turned slowly, and I felt its gaze, heavy and endless, pinning me in place. The air screamed with ticking, 100 clocks all at once, and the figure stepped closer. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The locket in my backpack burned against my back, and Ellie's voice, faint, broken, whispered in my ear, "Don't look." I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart slamming against my ribs, and the ticking stopped. When I opened my eyes, the room was gone. I was outside, standing in the manor's overgrown yard, the house looming behind me. The sky was grey, the air still, but my phone was in my hand. The time frozen at 3:03 a.m. My backpack was empty, no journal, no letters, no locket, just the fabric scrap, blue and faded, clutched in my fist. I turned to look at the manor, its windows dark, its gates shut tight. But from somewhere inside, faint and steady, I heard it, a single clock ticking, and in the silence that followed, a whisper, "Ellie." The town was still there, the hill, the road. But as I stumbled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching, waiting for 3 a.m. to come again.